first, guys, we have the S7 stock. Now, these are currently the newest trains that run on the London Underground, are the most spacious, and they feature on the District, Circle and Hammersmith and City lines. They were first introduced in 2012 on the Hammersmith and City line, and it was a £1.5 billion order from the UK government, the biggest order they've ever made on trains. It was then introduced on the Circle and District lines in 2013. Now, the last D-Stop train, which went on the District line, was taken off in 2017. So now, on the District, Circle and Hammersmith and City lines, this all-new stock is running called the S7. They have a clever regenerative brake system, so they are some of the most efficient trains on the London Underground. So they can recoup energy under lost braking and use that for when they go forward to save energy. Now, these trains are formed of 7 cars, which creates a total of 117.5 metres long and can seat 280 people. Now, these trains are the first ones to go above 1,000 people that can fit in them altogether, not including the seats. I think it's just over 1,000, I believe. I don't have the exact number. We're going to talk about the Metropolitan Line trains here as well, because it was actually closed, the Metropolitan Line, on the day of filming this. Now, those are called the S8 stock, but they were introduced in 2010 till 2012, when the old Metropolitan Line trains were cancelled, and made of 8 cars, 306 seats, and are 134 metres long, so they are longer. The only difference between them is they're longer than the S7s, and they have a different seating arrangement. Now, you would have noticed when we're in the S7 here, and the same with the S8, the seats, the colours on the seats, are of the 4 lines that they run on: the Hammersmith and City, the District, the Circle, and the Metropolitan. These trains are fully air-conditioned and are some of the most comfortable trains to run. Fun fact though, they aren't the fastest, even though they're the newest, because the District line still runs on old lines. So although the trains are new, the tracks are not new, so they can be quite slow, especially because they're quite long, having to hold up for traffic. But that was the District, Circle, Hammersmith and City, Metropolitan line trains. So now, let's go on to our next line. Next up, guys, we have the Central Line. Now, these are called the 1992 stock, although they didn't come into service on the Underground till 1993, but they were made in 92, so that's why they are called that. Now, they were refurbished in 2011 and 2012, and are currently undergoing traction control upgrades to make your journey safer, smoother, and just nicer altogether. They are consisted of 8 cars and are 133 metres long and can seat 264 passengers. They also have very clever systems called ATO and ATP, which means they can basically drive themselves without the driver having to use the traditional manhandle, and it creates less stress for the driver and just creates a smoother ride for any passengers that are on board the Central Line. The good news for the Central Line is you can expect new trains coming by 2033, and although that seems quite a long way off, it will make a big difference and hopefully won't feel quite as long. And they are beginning to show their age. The Central Line trains are proved to be the most stressful trains on the network, as a survey that I have read, and I can agree with that, because they do get very hot or very sticky because of lack of air conditioning. So yeah, in the 2011-2012 upgrades, they consisted of new seats and new handles to make it red with the Central Line, and new lighting, new buttons. So they are a bit nicer to travel in than, let's say, the Piccadilly Line, but still they are in need of some work. So let's see a line that is much newer than this next. Now we come to the Victoria Line trains, which, as you might know, are the second newest trains on the network, and were put on the Victoria Line between 2009 and 2011. Now, they replaced that very ageing 1967 stock. Those are older than the Bakerloo Line trains that run today, and I'll come on to that later. But you might know there was a big thing, the last 1967 stock train that ran. But anyway, they're much more modern, although they're not the most comfortable to ride in. See, they're very fast, but they jiggle about and never feel very settled. So they jiggle about when you're going. They generally aren't the most comfortable, not compared to the S7 stock. Now they are consisted of 8 cars, can seat 288 people, which is quite a lot, and are 133 metres long. Now, as I said, these trains are very fast, not quite as fast as the Jubilee Line trains, but their transformer, the transformer for electricity, is better on the Victoria Line trains, which means that it is able to convert the very powerful electricity coming off the rails more securely into the train's motor, which means you don't get that sound as you're accelerating and deaccelerating on the Jubilee Line trains. You might have noticed what that is. I will talk more on that later when I come to the Jubilee Line trains. Now, you might notice some of the bars in these trains are dark blue. I don't know why, because as you might know, the Victoria Line is light blue. The the Piccadilly is dark blue. So yeah, notice the artwork on the wall, very nice at Victoria Station. Next up, we have the Waterloo and City Line trains. Now, as you may know, the Waterloo and City Line is the shortest line on the network, just going from Bank in the city to Waterloo south of the river, and it's designed for people to commute to work every day. It's not open on Sundays, so that's probably why it just runs during the week and sometimes on a Saturday. It's also the shortest train on the network, only consisting of 4 cars, 156 seats, and is only 66.5 metres long. It runs fully underground, obviously, this line. The only other line doing so, I think, is the Victoria. Obviously the shortest train, as I mentioned. It was refurbished in 2006. Now, these trains are basically the same as the Central Line trains, just different handles, and it wasn't as refurbished as recently, so they have held up better than the Central Line trains, so they're actually they're about the same to sit in, but you don't really feel the difference. But they were refurbished later, so let's move on to our next line. Now we are going to move on to the Northern Line trains. Now, these trains are called the 1995 stock. However, this is very strange. They did not come into service on the London Underground until 1998. Don't ask me why. They were refurbished in 2013 till 2015 though, so they don't feel their age very well. They are holding up quite well. They consist of 6 cars, are 108 metres long, and they have 268 seats. They also have the same system as the Central and Waterloo and City Line trains, so they can have their ATO and ATP systems. That means they can drive themselves without the driver having to do the manhandle, so they're quite smart in that way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Central Line has been voted for the most stressful line. However, me personally, I find the Northern Line always very crowded, as you can see in this footage here. You rarely get to sit down unless it's kind of after peak hours. It is the busiest line on the network, that's probably why. And it does get very hot as well. I sometimes find me struggling to breathe in these trains. I do not like the Northern Line that much because it gets so busy. What's my favourite line? I do like the Jubilee, it's just so fast. But yeah, I find it a bit stressful. Because it branches off. There's a bank section, and then there's a section that goes kind of through the West End and stuff. But it goes all the way down to Morden. Now, there is an extension planned for this line to go, at Kennington there's a oval, so sometimes southbound trains terminate at Kennington or Morden, and they are planning to extend it all the way, where was it, they're extending it all the way northbound, again, kind of curving around north, so we should see an extension coming soon to the Northern Line, as we will with the Bakerloo Line that I'll talk about next time. But that was the Northern Line. So let's move on to, I believe, my favourite line, the Jubilee Line. Now for my favourite trains on the network, we come to the Jubilee Line. Now, these are called 1996 trains, and they actually did come into service the year they're called for once. They were refurbished in 2019. So that is why the seats are so nice, as you're going to see inside there. They have special seats for the people that are less able to stand. You'll probably see the grey ones. The seats are really nice. The stitching has been redone. They've added the bars in to make it special for the Jubilee. It's a very nice train to travel in. They are very fast as well, and you get that whining noise, which is the transformers that aren't as good on the Jubilee Line trains compared to the Victoria Line trains. Now, the trains are made up of 7 cars, are 126 metres long, and have 234 seats. Now, they were actually built on a cheaper budget than the Northern Line trains that they're very closely related to. But I feel like they're actually built better. The Northern Line trains were built to last for longer because they know it's a busier line. So I find they're actually very comfortable and stuff. They're very fast, very good. Now they also have the clever auto drive system, which means that the driver cannot use the manhandle, and you have special tourist mode where it says a light here for the museums or something other than change for the Northern Line. That's just an example of how they would do it, and it has just clever features like that. It's also one of the safest lines on the network. Well, it is the safest line on the network. It has, as you would have seen in the footage, some special safety doors as well as the actual train doors, because people do for some reason push people onto the lines, so that's why they added that in. An extension was built from Westminster down past Waterloo and around to Stratford in 1999, about 20 odd years nearly after it was built, or about 10 years after the Jubilee Line was built, which added those safety features. So it kind of goes all the way from where was it? So it goes up from north and all curves around down south past Waterloo and all the way up to Stratford again. So it's quite a practical line. And I actually took the Jubilee Line to St John's Wood when I did the abandoned underground stations video. And let's move on to our next line. Now for my second favourite line, we have the old Bakerloo Line trains. As you can see from the front of the train, they are showing their age a lot. They're the 1972 stock, oldest trains that run on the network, but I love them. Lots of people hate them because they're called the bouncy trains. I like them because of that. The seats are actually very comfortable. It was refurbished since the 90s. It hasn't been refurbished since then. So it is showing its age. It's very rattly. The doors make that certain kind of clang when they shut. And sometimes they have to re-shut again because they don't shut properly. It's just little details like that I love the Bakerloo Line trains so much, just because they're that old, quite vintage. Now, the new tube for London that was supposed to run on the Central Line will be added to the Bakerloo Line as well in 2033. Again, that is a long way off, but hopefully we can look forward to that. It's made up of 7 cars. It can sit 264 passengers and is 114 metres long, so not very long at all. And although the Piccadilly Line is only 1 year newer, it was refurbished much recently, so it doesn't feel as old. But as I said, I do like the Bakerloo Line trains a lot. Now, not as many people ride them anymore, but they still can get quite busy. And what I mean about the seats is they have these lovely kind of armrests that kind of hug you in, and they actually have some of their stuffing left in them. So they're very comfortable seats. So actually it is quite a comfortable line. It's not very fast, obviously, because it is quite old, and the queue for this train was massive when I went in it today, or when I recorded this. So I believe our next line is the Piccadilly Line, actually. So let's see. Yes. Next up, we have the Piccadilly Line. These are called the 1973 stock. So, as I said earlier, only 1 year newer than the Bakerloo Line trains, but were refurbished in 2000. So slightly more recently than the Bakerloo. So they are a bit nicer to sit in for the majority, but I prefer the Bakerloo. They are supposed to get new trains in 2025. So much more recently than the older trains on the Bakerloo Line, but it is, I think, the second most travelled line along with the Central Line, so I can understand why they're giving it new trains first. The Piccadilly Line trains are made up of 6 cars, are 108 metres long and have 272 seats. Now we're at Piccadilly Circus here. Fun fact about that, it was called Piccadilly Circus for a couple of days because of the new Star Trek series that Amazon were doing. That's just a little Easter egg if you saw that. Yeah, so the new trains, 1 year newer than the Bakerloo, but they're not as bouncy. I think they were fitted with special systems when they were refurbished to not make them quite as bouncy. New handrails, new seats. Some of the handrails are yellow. Could someone tell me why they're yellow? I mean, the Piccadilly is dark blue, and that's what the other handles are, but as you can see, some of them are yellow. We'll never know why, probably, will we? So, yeah, we need to look forward to the new trains on this line, because they are quite stuffy to ride in, and they do get very busy. So let's move on to our next line. As I said, guys, in the introduction of this video, we are going to be including the Overground and the DLR. So we are now doing the Overground, that for a lot of the line does run alongside National Rail services, as you can see, and the train itself is very spacious and a lot like just a train, a normal train you would take, apart from the fact that the seats are like the Underground. So, originally it was the East London line, the Overground. It's expanded ever since, but the first bit opened in 2007 and took over from the East London line, which was a yellow line back in the day. It is very spacious, as I said, airy, very modern. It ranges all over London. It goes down to Wapping and Shadwell, back up to Stratford, then at West Brompton, where I was, all the way in the West End, Richmond, Kew Gardens. I mean, it just goes everywhere. I mean, I wish I could say the same for the reliability, because on the day that I took these trains, half the line was shut because one of them caught fire at, when was it, at New Cross Gate. That's actually very unfortunate. But yeah, they do get cancelled quite a lot, I find, with the Overground trains. Last on our list for this video, you guessed it, is the good old DLR. Now these trains are quite rattly because they're not like the Underground trains, because they do run above ground, apart from Bank, I believe, is one of the only stations where it does go underground a bit. It first opened in 1987, and some of those 1987's trains still run on the network today, so they're over 30 years old, some of them. They're quite rattly and are showing their age, but they're quite fun, really. You can sit at the front or the back of the train and look out of where you're going, so I quite like them. They are due to be replaced in 2023, so the newest out of any of the TfL services, trains, trams, of any of them, actually. So we should be getting new DLR trains very soon, so we'll be looking forward to that. Now, I like the DLR because you can see lots of things out of it, and it runs in the Docklands. DLR stands for Docklands Light Railway, if you didn't know. That's a fun fact. It goes around from Shadwell to XL, where I've gone to the car shows and New Scientist Live. So it's very handy for me to just pop up down there, go and see car shows and other events like that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. There's a little bit more footage of me riding the DLR to show, but like, subscribe and share the video, and I put on some music to end out.
Thoughts get thrown around, but we keep going on believing, and on till we're all cried out, 'cause we don't feel like throwing it all